let's get into the Mavericks. What did they get up to this summer, Simon?
Yeah, we're continuing our season preview we've been working on with the Mavericks. They did have a pretty eventful offseason. We've talked about some teams that did stuff, but the Mavericks are higher on that list. Lots of roster changeover from last season. Here's just a few of the major things. They brought back Seth Curry, previous Mavericks standout who paired really well with Luka. So they picked him up. They brought back Dante Exum back to the NBA. He has not been playing in the league for the past couple of years, so he is back. They traded for Richaun Holmes. That was kind of like a draft night. They moved up a couple of picks and got Richaun Holmes in the deal to kind of pick up a late first-round pick. And, the Kings were trying to get off the salary. So that's how that happened. They signed Derek Jones. He was a free agent. Bulls did not bring him back. And then they also had probably their biggest signing in the offseason actually is Grant Williams.
Yeah,
and the Kyrie re-signing. Those are the two big deals.
I thought you were saying, to correct yourself to add the junior to Derek Jones Jr. You were like,
No.
I can't just call him Derek Jones. It's Derek Jones Jr.
Not to be confused with all the other Derek Joneses out there. But yeah, those are all their major signings that they made this offseason. And then they also drafted two guys in the first round of the draft. So Derek Lively was the first out of Duke, and then Olivier Maxence Prosper out of the French region of Canada.
Beautiful Canadian French there.
Via Marquette, I think, is where he played his college ball.
Yeah. Did we get Markieff Morris in there as well?
Oh, yeah. Markieff Morris is a recent addition. They signed him because they actually waived JaVale McGee after attempting to trade him for months. And there not being any takers because he had 2 years left on his contract for like 11 million or so, about $5.5 million per year. So they ended up just cutting bait. So they'll just eat that salary. And then they picked up Markieff Morris as his replacement on just a veteran minimum deal.
Yeah, because you have to have one, high profile NBA bonehead on your team. So as soon as JaVale was gone, they needed to act quickly.
Yeah.
And they picked up Markieff Morris, who I just watched clips of. I think he was on the Gilbert Arenas pod. No, he was on All the Smoke. And they were making very tough guy allegations about Nikola Jokic washing his back from like an altercation that took place in the court like 2 seasons ago now. But I mean, I actually have always liked Markieff Morris as a player. Obviously, he's getting older. But when I watch stuff like that, All the Smoke is really high level NBA drama entertainment. But I feel like sometimes guys feed into it a little bit too much and just really act like they're in grade 9 talking tough. And that's exactly how the Morris twins, the more I came across talking about, it's like, guys, you're professional athletes. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you're all millionaires. Like,
I'll be interested to see what Markieff Morris has left because he wasn't exactly he hasn't been a very impactful player the last couple of years. He's kind of struggled to get onto the court with some teams that like desperately needed some like larger wings and some guys with strength to just defend the low post and hit some threes. And he hasn't even been able to play that much. So I don't know if there's a lot left in the tank for Markieff. But
this is how we're starting the podcast. Deep dive. Markieff Morris. That's like, let's move on to the next team. I think we've covered all the stuff Mavericks fans want us to talk about. We've talked about Markieff Morris. Big check.
In terms of guys who actually impact their lineup a lot this year, I think, bringing Kyrie back, there are some numbers with Kyrie and Luka. So the record when they both played for the Mavericks last year wasn't great. They were under 500. However, the on-off numbers when Kyrie and Luka were on the floor together were a pretty decent positive. And I don't have those right in front of me at the moment, but I do know that, they're huge plus offensively and, obviously not great defensively, but the spectacular offense did outweigh the negative defense when they shared the court.
Yes. And also Kyrie lineups without Luka were also very successful in offense. And actually not quite as bad on defense. You'd have to look at the lineup data to see who else was on the floor there. That I don't think it was, Kyrie. But Luka's defense was pretty bad last year. And
I thought it was his worst season, even worse than like when he was a rookie.
Yeah, I've always been a mild Luka defender of Luka's defense in terms of like, it's just not quite as bad as some smaller guards or something. Like there's still things that he can
Yeah.
do defensively,
Well,
but he wasn't doing them last year very
it's
much.
hard
The Mavericks
because,
were better.
he definitely has the ability to be a decent defender. Like, he's never gonna be a lockdown guy, but he gets his hands on balls in the passing lane.
He's
And
big, strong, and
he's
smart, and
he's big and strong, and he knows where to be on the floor. It's more just like a lack of, and I don't know how much it's related to conditioning. I don't know how much it's related to kind of like the insane offensive workload that he has to manage a lot of the time, but he just seems to kind of run out of juice on the defensive end of the floor, especially like late in games. And he just like, he just doesn't have the energy to like, make it through a pick or to get all the way out into the corner to close out on a guy or whatever it is. Like, he just doesn't move enough on the defensive side of the floor.
I think the best defensive thing that Luka has going right now, and this is sort of damning with faint praise, but he's probably the easiest star to hide defensively because of his size and strength.
Yeah.
It's just easier to stash him on a wider variety of players, where sometimes if you have like a really small guard and you want to stash him on the least threatening scorer, some teams just have a guy whose least threatening scorer is totally capable of posting up a 6'1" guy if you allow that. So with Luka, you don't have the same. There's a less wide variety of people that can take advantage of him. But I think Luka is primed. Well, we gotta go into this every season with Luka, but I feel like he's primed to have his best season yet in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think we like say that every year just because he's a player that's like young and really good, but he looks in really good shape at the World Cup, despite some of the antics. And maybe he'll have an antic-filled season. That's not out of the question either. But I'm still, in terms of just the offensive package, I think he's arguably the best perimeter player in the NBA offensively.
And I really like how the Mavericks have decided to build around him this offseason, because I thought one of their biggest failings last year, especially post Kyrie trade, is, you do have to hide Lucas somewhat. And there are, kind of like you said, he is big and strong. So I think there is kind of a James Harden-y role. You put him on a player where, it's a bigger player that doesn't have like insane foot speed, but also Luka's strong enough where he's not going to be able to post him up either. So he's not like a liability in a kind of a mismatch situation in the paint. But in order to do that, your wings need to be able to guard the perimeter. And after trading Dorian Finney-Smith, and with the struggles that Reggie Bullock had last year, the Mavericks just weren't able to effectively guard the perimeter with non-Luka players, some of their bigger wings.
And do you think that they are better suited for that this year?
Yeah, I think Dante Exum is actually going to help quite a bit in that regard. Yeah. Depending on how much he plays. I think Josh Green has had flashes of like really, really excellent man-to-man defense. And it's just a matter of like more reps, kind of developing that, buying into that system and that team level IQ. I think that's really promising. And then I think Grant Williams, much maligned on the Celtics last year, but Grant Williams is still decent at switching out and guarding the perimeter. I'm not going to call him a incredible. He definitely can get to the point where he's a little bit overwhelmed by speed and quickness if you're asking him to guard point guards all the time. But you can put him on twos and smaller wings.
I think that, and you've talked about your Grant Williams defensive doubts before. I think Grant Williams is a great defender 3, 4, 5. I think when I don't really see him guarding guards. Like, I don't think he has that foot speed. His advantage is his strength and hustle, and that's not going to cut it against perimeter players. I think Josh Green is a better fit there, and he did spend more time guarding guards and shooting guards last year with the Mavericks. So he's lacking.
He's lacking the strength, but he definitely has the speed and the quickness.
Yeah, and he's not super big either. So like, they might start him at the 3 this year. He's not big for a 3. He's around like, he's 6'5". Maybe they'll list him at 6'6" in shoes or whatever. But it's a big season for him if he has a bust out season. Because there was a weird stretch last year with the Mavericks right after the Kyrie trade where they gave Josh Green a whole bunch of stuff to do, and he was killing it. And everyone was all hyped on Josh Green. And then no one really talks about how like that really only lasted about a week and a half. And then I remember picking up in like a fantasy league, and it was, a great pickup. And then it stopped being a great pickup really fast. And he sort of never got back to that. But really versatile player, got over some of his scoring aversion, really creative playmaker. It's an interesting piece next to Luka and Kyrie, who are ball dominant, but Josh Green's also a very like hungry cutter and a quick passer. So it's not like he needs the ball in his hands to do his style of playmaking. And I think those guys can be very valuable on offense, especially if he's just not as afraid of shooting. And he shot 40% on threes last year, but he only took a few of them. He's not up to like, league average attempts or anything like that, but there's some more promising signs there. His like efficiency has gone up every season he's been in the league, and so has his free throw percentage. So he's clearly, the skill development is happening there, because he shot like 56% in his rookie season.
Yeah.
From the free throw line, I mean, not from the field. Like it was
rough.
So yeah, he's gone from what looked like a no way this guy's ever going to be a shooter. Yeah, here's his rookie slash line. It's 45% field goals, 16% on threes, and 56% on free throws. That, like, to me, if I wasn't watching the Mavericks, I'd just be like, well, that's a non-shooter forever. Like, you don't recover from those numbers in your rookie season. So he's already been a massive success as a development project for them. It's now just a question of like, can he take it even further? He's only 22 years old. Yeah. So, there's a lot of,
well, he's already proved he's well on his way.
Yeah.
And then I think Derek Jones Jr. is actually a really nice piece, sneakily, for the Mavericks. So we had a stint with Derek Jones Jr. in Portland.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out great because, we really needed some help on the interior, and we really needed just like a wing who can spot up. And that's not really Derek Jones's game. His game is crashing the offensive glass and being kind of like a vertical threat. And, you can run off-ball cuts with him. You can run a little bit of pick and roll with him. I mean, he's not really sturdy and stout enough to set screens, but, if you have a really savvy passer who can kind of like, and Derek Jones Jr. is pretty good at just attacking those gaps, you can take advantage of that. So obviously with Damian Lillard in Portland, that's not really his role as a point guard, and that he wasn't helping us in the holes that we had on defense. But I think it's a great fit for the Mavericks potentially. Offensively, definitely with Kyrie and Luka, they can utilize Derek Jones. And then it's another wing who, is pretty versatile. He's pretty versatile on the defensive end of the floor.
I have a hard time figuring out the Mavericks rotation. I see a lot of players that I like and are useful, and I think, like fit some of the roles that, I've always thought of fit really well around Luka, in terms of you want aggressive guards, shooting in space, obviously, and rim runners. And the Mavericks went out and signed every single rim runner they could find, and drafted a guy who, with a really high draft pick, drafted a guy that projects to be an elite rim runner. But now they've got, so Derek Lively is who I'm talking about, but Richaun Holmes has been one of the better rim running bigs for the last couple of years. He's been almost like a specialist in that role. He's got like a little floater to complement his athleticism and rim gravity. Dwight Powell has been like another role player level excellent cutter next to Luka. I mean, there's a reason that Dwight Powell just ends up starting most of the games at center for the Mavericks every year, even though fans don't want him to. Like, no one else works out, and Dwight Powell's like, well, I can do the thing. If you need someone to do the thing,
he's also been their only guy who isn't like a complete disaster defensively at the 5.
Yeah. But he is a bit of a disaster defensively at the 5. I think Dwight Powell's a good
player,
player,
but not as
as
bad. It gets worse.
Yeah, Christian Wood. And then, like you said, Derek Jones Jr. So they got 4 guys whose offensive role is primarily a rim runner. They're not going to play all 4 of those guys. I think only 2 of them are going to make the rotation, especially if Maxi Kleber is healthy. And him and Grant Williams are going to soak up a bunch of front court minutes. That means like they're going to keep one rim runner out there. They're probably going to not have they might not even have a rim runner all the time. They might go for a 5 out sometimes, which means no Lively, Holmes, or Powell, or Derek Jones Jr. So that's going to be a big fight in camp, I think, to see who gets that, and someone's going to drop out. So I agree with you. I really like the fit for Derek Jones Jr. And always awesome when like a role player with like an obvious skill set finds his home. But I do like when that signing happened, I was like, oh, that's kind of perfect. But oh, there's a lot of competition for that role that
Yeah,
he
that's
wants to
true.
do. And
Yeah.
hopefully him being a little bit more versatile, like defensively than some of these guys gives him an edge. But it's not, I mean, I like all these guys, so I'm not necessarily rooting for one of them to fall out. But I think that's will be his obstacle, is like becoming a high level rim roller next to Luka, while also being able to defend all over the floor a little bit better than some of the bigs.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the Mavericks' struggle is going to continue to be defense, although I do think it won't be as bad as it was last year, because they still don't really have an answer for defending, the really awesome small guards, and they
Mhm.
still really don't protect the rim all that well. But they are improved at the wing positions. They are improved in terms of their versatility and switchability, and in a way that can be kind of a function of rim protection because you're just preventing less penetration.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have great interior rim protection, like your point of attack defense being good is an option.
It's pretty
I
important.
don't I don't love them in either sense, but I think if some of these defensive guys can establish themselves over some of the offensive guys, like the Dante
Yeah.
Exum question is a really good one, because
Oh yeah.
the players he's competing with at the guard spots, I mean, he can play kind of 1, 2, 3 on defense, but are all, like the other guys are all offensive. It's Jaden Hardy, Tim Hardaway
Mhm.
Jr., and Seth Curry. So like if Jason Kidd opts for offense, and sometimes like Jason Kidd is a total wild card as a coach. I really don't ever know what he's going to do. And he's already been kind of like doing his thing in the media. Which whenever Jason Kidd is talking to the media, I'm just like, are you telling the truth? Are you playing mind games? Like he's just
No.
always been such an enigmatic, strange personality as a coach. Ever since
Yeah.
he purposefully spilled water on the court, I'll never like he's always going to be an interesting coach to watch, to say the least. But because one of the things he said recently was that Olivia Maxence Prosper and Derek Lively are going to be competing for starting positions, which
Oh, I love
that
to hear that about Omax.
yeah, that's really
That's exciting.
cool. And then I went for a walk this morning, was listening to the True Hoop podcast with Jared Hector and David Thorpe. And David Thorpe had a take, and he's a pretty well plugged in um, guy who also like is a coach himself and kind of knows coaches. And he was like, as soon as he heard that, he was worried the Mavericks are already planning to trade these two. Like they're just hungry for a third star to put next to Kyrie and Luka, and they see Omax and Lively as like potentially juicy chips. So they're trying to like drum up some interest. It worried me a little bit.
I
I'm
don't
like,
buy that at all.
I can see the Mavericks do it. They gave away the farm just to
You know
get
the surefire
Kyrie.
way to lose Luka Doncic to a demanded trade in a couple of years? Like go all in on one season and not have it work out and have everything collapse around him.
Well, I agree, but I think the idea is like, oh, if we got a third foundational piece because these rookies played well early, or like But I agree. I think what would be a stronger move for Luka is like making sure that these young guys are put in a position to succeed and making him excited with the long term vision of the roster. Like I'm totally with you on that one. That makes more sense. But front offices are very prone to um, panicking to get stars. I mean, it's not even about the
Yeah.
win now part of it. It's just like gotta get a star, gotta get a star. And there's lots of like there's lots of players there's lots of like stars feel like fair game to go on. I think with like Joel Embiid and Giannis both making those little speeches this summer, it was sort of like, oh, teams are loading up to be able
Mhm.
to trade for these guys when the time comes.
The Mavericks, I don't think that's realistic for them to trade for any kind of star that's like the
Not for those two,
level
no.
the level that's, meaningful enough to really impact their title chances because there's so many other teams that have much better
Yeah,
packages to trade than they do.
yeah. But yeah, I hope that Omax and Derek Lively are getting a chance to start just for normal basketball reasons,
Both of those
because
guys have very high defensive upside, and
yeah,
that's exactly what the Mavericks need.
yeah, you never know what you're getting from a rookie is the only tough thing. And sometimes like maybe both of these guys are going to be amazing players, but won't be good in the rookie season. That's very plausible.
But
So
this
that
is
happens
this
a
is the
lot.
kind of team that I think can afford to play a rookie who's pretty good on defense, even if he just isn't ready offensively yet.
It's pretty rare though that big guys are good at defense right away.
I'm thinking more about Omax in this
Yeah,
sense,
yeah,
and he's an older rookie. I think he was a 4-year player in college, 3 or 4-year player. So
yeah.
it's not a he's not a spring chicken coming in.
If Dante Exum, Josh Green, Omax, and Grant Williams, and let's not forget Maxi Kleber, are all in the rotation on a night-to-night basis, or like 4 or 5 of those guys are part of the rotation, I think the Mavericks have a chance to cobble together an average defense. And let's just remember, like, we're talking about a team that was like close to a top 5 defense and close to a top 5 offense, bottom 5 defense. And that means missing the playoffs in like this extremely competitive era of NBA basketball. Like you can't be a joke defensively, and they still have a chance to be a joke defensively because there's still a lot of offensive players on that roster, and there's a lot of holes still. And Derek Lively is a rookie, and Richaun Holmes is very small. Like they don't like, and so is Dwight Powell. He's undersized at center, and Markieff Morris should not be seeing minutes. And so there's a wide range here.
I think there's the pieces here to be 15th or 16th defensively.
And the Mavericks were good at defense the year before with Kleber and Dorian Finney-Smith. Like they didn't have a perfect defensive roster before, and they managed to be quite strong on that side of the ball. And Luka being okay would go a big ways to it too. And Kyrie honestly is also okay sometimes. Like I don't think he's a garbage. Like I think he can be a better defender than than Dame or something like that. Like he does have the ability to compete on that end when he wants to.
I mean, I guess he's a little bit bigger than Dame, not by much though.
I just think he also is he's a little bit feistier in his one-on-one matchups. Dame Dame never learned how to not die on a screen. He just sees a screen and he's just
I guess I'm okay
going to bed.
I'm okay with not being a Damian Lillard fan anymore.
Not meaning to attack your boy while he's still your boy for however longer. We're gonna get to a little bit of that, I think, today. Any other Mavericks thoughts?
Nope. I mean, I'm excited. I want to see this team succeed. I want to see more contender level teams in the West. Maybe this team isn't quite at that level, but they have the star power and they should be awesome on offense. So they should be a good watch.
Yeah, I agree.